On today's podcast, I speak with James Stokes. We talked about his first destination wedding back in 2012 in Dublin, Ireland, and how they had to bring their 5-month-old son along with them, and they were learning how to drive on the other side of the road and drive a manual transmission car. We also talked a little bit about taxes and business and what he went to school for, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. So I'd like to say hi to James Stokes. He's joining me on the podcast today. Say hi, James.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, man. So what got you into photography? What's your background in photography?
So my dad was an amateur photographer, and growing up, he was one who literally every time we went anywhere, he was always wearing a Canon AE1 around his neck.
Oh, nice.
And I remember it very vividly. He had like this orange canvas case, and he would just throw it in the Jeep whenever we'd go in the mountains or wherever we went. And I ended up getting a camera when I was really, really young. And it was one with like the old flash bulbs and like 120 film. And I photographed dogs and flowers and, stuff that, a 7-year-old kid would do.
Yeah.
But
you had to pay for those flashes, right? They weren't reusable, correct?
Correct. Yeah. You had like, I don't know if it was like 6 of them or something like that. But it was an expensive hobby for like an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
But my mom was really supportive and my dad was really, cool about giving me used equipment. And so, that's kind of the start of it anyway.
Where are you from? Are you from the Wisconsin area?
So I kind of split my time between Utah and Wisconsin. I was born in Utah, but I grew up on a dairy farm for the most part in Amherst, Wisconsin. So I'm a country boy at heart, I guess.
Nice. So your dad kind of got you into photography. Do you admire him as a photographer, or do you have anybody else that you look up to kind of get inspiration from?
That's one of the things I had to like look back. I've been doing this professionally for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think what inspired me most was my grandfather was an artist, and his paintings were the things that hung around our living room and our house.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was more so the nostalgia that came with that artwork and photographs that really inspired me to do what I do. Mind you, 2005, I graduated high school. It wasn't cool yet, and we had just transitioned from film to digital, even at our own high school. Like I grew up in the dark room developing my own film and things like that. And it was painful. Like if I accidentally, screwed up a roll of 35 millimeter film and I just photographed a game or something like that, and you're like, oh no. So
there's no coming back. There's like no backups either.
No.
You screw that negative up, you're done. Yeah.
And I just immersed myself in Photoshop, like that original Photoshop 7. I just remember just loving creating images. And, there are artists out there that I admire. And Jose Villa obviously is incredible. And I still love that old film aesthetic without the anxiety and cost of it, obviously.
Do you shoot on film at all?
I do, but only personally. I did a styled shoot with it a couple years ago, but I haven't published any of it because I'm not sure I'm ready to commit to the switch. And honestly, it's just not something that fits within my pricing model for my business at the moment. But
yeah, it's expensive to get that stuff developed now.
Definitely. I love the way that film has grown over the last decade and the ability you can to manipulate it. Because ultimately, shooting film, you're converting it to digital anyway.
Yeah.
But I love that classic nostalgic look. I also admire, there's a couple other photographers that shoot really documentary style. And while that isn't my style, I can appreciate it for what it is.
Nice.
And Jonas Peterson is one of those that he just has this beautiful style. And the way that he's able to edit his images that, are consistent with, over the last however many years he's been shooting. So, yeah.
You brought something up that made me think of a skateboarder. He was a professional skateboarder, and then he became an actor. Do you know who Jason Lee is?
I've heard of the name.
My Name is Earl, basically.
Yeah.
So I watched a documentary on him a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now. He shoots only Polaroid and like big 8x10 Polaroid. He bought up all the old stock of the 8x10 Polaroid. So he really, in that documentary, talked about there's just something about doing that one-off photo that you could, there's no copies, there's nothing, there's no backups. There's just something about making you slow down. And when you shoot film, you really have to plan out what you want to shoot instead of like the digital stuff now where you can just spray and pray and get everything that you wanted. So just bringing up that the flash bulbs, actually, that's what made me think about it. And uh, I find that interesting. I've never been brave enough myself to actually buy a film camera. I only had like a point and shoot Canon way back in like the 90s. I took a class trip to Germany, and it was, great ISO 400. I think I shot on, like, all around photo, and but I've never been brave enough to shoot it professionally myself.
Yeah, I guess I've had some really good experiences, and it was one of those things where you valued every
Oh yeah,
single frame that you got, and especially if you were spending, at the end, it's like $13 for a roll of
yep,
film, and then almost $20 for development. Like every single one of those images was so important, and I think there's
yeah,
something to be said for not only that, but for printed images as well. Like, I have several children, and
yep,
I wish I photographed them more, but when I do photograph them, the first thing I'll do is I'll print all of those images, and not only print them, but put them on, an archival piece so that they last and they stand the test of time. And that was one of the major reasons I love photography. Was it connected me to the past, it connected me to my family and the people that I didn't get to see very often. And so opening up an album was like going back in time for me, and it all kind of molded together in, studying family history and studying art and all of those things. So yeah, it has a very near and dear place to my heart, photographs and images and all of that. So
did you go to school for photography?
I actually went to school for undeclared, so much.
Undeclared.
Yes, so
Party.
many.
You went to school for party.
Yeah, I went. I had a scholarship to go to the University of Utah, and
Oh,
plans
nice.
changed. But I went to UWSP, and I was one of those first students to take the WDMD courses, like that
Oh,
had just
cool.
come out. And a lot of it I already knew, and but plans completely changed, and I never told myself, "Hey, you could do this for a living." It was always just seen as a hobby.
Yes. Yep.
And I eventually went to school for business, which I'm really glad I did. And along the way, I took marketing classes and, finance courses and things like that, but never studied film. I studied art, but not film.
Yeah.
Um,
I found it very difficult to pick up the business aspect of this business. I can pick up the art. The art side is more, it comes more natural to me, and I understand that part, but like, taxes and receipts and marketing, and I'm starting to figure it out slowly as I go. And I wish I would have had more of a mindset to go to school for that or take classes in it. That's what I'm really drowning back. So that would be my best advice to anybody that has like a more artistic feeling going into school. Put that kind of as your major in the business aspect, because with a better business, your artistic side will grow further. You know what I mean? I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's how I found it.
no, absolutely. That's one of the challenges for me is kind of balancing my left and right brain. And there are
Yes.
seasons to every business, but being self-employed, there like winter is like the number tax season that you go
Mhm.
into planning for the next whole year. And by the time the snow melts, I'm ready to like not look at numbers
Yeah.
anymore. It would be great. And I do a few things on the side. I actually run three businesses total, all of which require me to know a lot about taxes and money and balance sheets and things like that.
Yeah.
So I
The
have,
boring stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I always tell people I have a really boring
Yeah.
undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm glad I kind of partnered up with Brandon because he understands more of that side better than I do, at least for the video side. My photography, I'm getting better at it myself from learning from what I've learned from Brandon and his DJ side and everything like that. So do you have any like workshops that you're working on? Do you do anything like that? I know you're running like a marketing business as well. Talk to me a little bit about that as well.
so, in 2013, I had already been running my business for about 3 years full time, me and my
Nice.
wife. And I realized there was such a huge need for all the things that I just taught myself in the last 3 years, which was how to create a website, how to start social media, and even just a need for professional photos. So I wrote a business plan, having just come out of business school. I graduated in 2012, actually,
Nice.
and I wrote this plan and got a grant to get started locally. To just help small businesses get off their feet. And I've been doing that, I'd say more part time over the last, 5 years or so, 5, 6 years. And my goal is to work one-on-one with people. And so from conception all the way through, website to marketing plans and things like that. And this last year, we were able to take on a full-time position between my wife and I. So it's about 20 hours a week for both of us for a children's museum, which has been really, really a great opportunity, but challenging at the exact same time.
Is that in Medford by you, or?
It is. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I know they opened a children's museum in the mall in Wausau. I just saw that. So, that was a little interesting as well. So how is that going for you? What does that involve? I'm interested.
So I'm the executive director, and I took over after two previous directors had left. And this got started by a group of locals who had moved away and then came back and were in a similar age bracket to myself and had children, and wanted to have the same type of experience that they had living, in Monroe or in the cities and things like that. So they pulled together their resources and basically renovated this old building on Main Street in Medford and got businesses behind them to create basically 2 floors at roughly about 4,000 square feet of space into exhibits for children, roughly, 0 to 10 is kind of our age bracket. And then starting this spring, I'm working on a project to develop basically 1 acre of city space into an outdoor space. We haven't branded it yet, but it will essentially be a part of, the national forest and putting it right into the city that has, a butterfly garden, a Zen garden, a community garden, also like a Northwoods wetland and activity space, and some outdoor learning spaces as well. So I'm really excited about that. I'm basically going to take my childhood as my inspiration and be like, this is all the stuff I really love doing, and just putting it into basically Huey's backyard.
That's cool. That is really awesome. I didn't know anything about that. So that's sounds like you have a lot of things on your plate coming up this year. So getting back to like wedding photography, did you jump right into wedding photography, or did you do anything? I mean, you kind of said you did it as a hobby, but did you do anything professionally, like shoot landscapes or real estate or anything like that before you went into wedding photography?
Actually, I shot my first wedding in high school. I was a junior, and I shot it in Skokie, Illinois. And it was at a restaurant bar called Zhivago's, and it was in like the old Ukrainian Russian district. It was actually my girlfriend's mother, and I was one of the only people there who didn't speak Russian. So that was really, really interesting. And I shot it on 35 millimeter film in a super like dark, almost nightclubby atmosphere. But that was my first experience, and it was also one of the most terrifying.
Yeah, I remember my first wedding too. I had no idea what I was doing and just kind of went with it and let it flow. There's nothing you can control, and that's what I really enjoy about weddings is it's just organized chaos. It sets you up for pretty much anything, in your life. And I've been kind of just looking at it that way, is like, if I can shoot a wedding, if I can direct a wedding, I can pretty much do anything, in my life. I don't know about you, but I think you have like 8 kids.
Yeah, we're actually working on 9.
Oh man, another one, 9. Huh?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
Oh, thank you. And I agree to some extent. Whenever you do something and you're passionate about it, and you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But if you go back at it and you do it over and over and over again, eventually you build this confidence. And the more experiences you have, good and bad, they're going to help you prepare for the next time that you do something.
Yeah.
Whether it's public speaking or it's getting up in front of a ton of people. Mm-hmm. That's something I wasn't naturally gifted at. I have a huge like stage fright.
Oh yeah.
But somehow if I'm wearing a camera, I put on the hat of, okay, this is my job, and I can tell people what to do, and I don't need to worry about, what people think of me, which is really, really helpful. I think some people get stuck in their heads, and on my worst days, it's when I didn't come out of my shell enough.
Yeah.
And kind of rest back in, I don't know, I'm kind of a thinker and a dreamer, and don't always articulate everything that I would love to happen right now. And so when I'm able to do that, well, that's my best day.
Speaking about that, the few weddings that we did together, I noticed you're like, all right, come on, snap, snap, snap. We got to go. And you were just on it, and I was like, that was pretty impressive. Like you were even directing my guys. Okay, get out of the way. Do this, do that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Keep going, man. I don't have to do it now. you know?
Yeah, there's something, it was kind of a joke. When I was growing up, my teachers always told me that I was kind of a dictator. And I sat on that for a while, and I knew that I always wanted to be my own boss.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
I've learned some of the gifts of soft talk now. But ultimately, being able to serve my clients well means valuing their time more than my own.
In that environment, definitely, you have to be very to the point, direct to the point, especially with a group of 12 or 15, or I don't remember how many people were with us that one time, but
a ton. And, your goal at the end of the day is to make sure they have an incredible experience, come away with really great memories. And the way that they feel the whole time that they're doing it is really important. And that's one of the things, being in weddings, being in my siblings' weddings, like, what was my experience like and how could I improve upon some of those things? And time is one of the most valuable resources you have. Definitely. And on a wedding day, it's a premium.
Yeah.
And so the most efficient I can be, and the team that I'm working with on that day, and then the more that we're able to collaborate, the better ultimately.
Of course. Yep. So are you doing any wedding video work?
So I actually just partnered with a team of 3 this last year to come alongside me on Stokehouse and basically collaborate together on for weddings and other events. So we have roughly about 5 weddings booked this year. The majority of them are with me, but at least one of them, I believe, is them shooting by themselves. We had the opportunity this summer to basically throw a wedding, plan it, and I was the officiant, and my wife was actually in the wedding, and I did some of the photography, which is way more than anyone should ever have to do. But it was so fun, and it was right in my backyard, and that was kind of their first experience shooting weddings. Oh, cool. But they had all gone to school for videography, but had no opportunities to basically shoot a wedding. So that's how we got started.
That's awesome. Awesome. Sounds like you're going to take over the market.
Now, my goal was really, when I wrote that business plan, is to be able to have a video team that I was really comfortable with, that knew how I worked. And selecting that took a really long time. I mean, it took me almost 6 years to get my team that I wanted. Because often video guys, like, they want a director, but it's really hard to do both, to shoot well and to direct. And a photographer just by default seems to have more of that at their plate. And when you can do that well, and you know how your team works and what they're looking for, you can deliver a product that I just think is going to stand out.
Yeah. That's why I always work with multiple people when I do video, because it's not just like a safety blanket of having multiple cameras in the same environment, but being able to direct people and not always rely on my shot. Photography, you're just you're not constantly rolling. You know what I mean? You have more of a connection with the client than just being behind a camera that's always rolling. So and especially if it's like a speaking area, like they're reading a note or something like that, I can't give direction to the client because I don't want to put my voice over their audio or whatever. So having multiple people getting that information, I can actually direct them to do whatever they want to do, and then worry about my own camera as well. So to people that do it solo, I kind of envy them, because that's just something I don't think I could do ever, especially for video. I can solo shoot photography, but not video. Definitely not. So what are some of your biggest pet peeves on the wedding day? You're talking about it took you 6 years to select someone to shoot video with you. What do you advise, or what's something that someone should know if they're working with you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Because I'm a perfectionist, that's something I kind of have to leave at the door sometimes, because you're always working on a time crunch. Yeah. And I work really closely with my couples to go over their timeline and let them know what they can anticipate, and how long things are going to take. I guess a pet peeve is definitely a crunch day. Knowing that I'm going into it, I'm going to feel rushed the entire day simply because of one minor change in a timeline. Yeah. I have to really talk myself into okay, you're going to do the best you can do in this amount of time, and just go in with realistic expectations. And what really sets the precedence for the entire day is that first 45 minutes of a wedding day. And I guess my goal is to go in and photograph all the details in a nice quiet room by beautiful light and just create beautiful images with all their beautiful stuff. And then somehow I'm just like ready to tackle the day. After I got all of those beautiful images, I'm like, okay, I can do, whether it's a loud, crazy room or like people who are late or what have you. I just feel confident moving forward. And it's really all based on like those first few minutes, right?
Nice. So that's more of your process then. Like if you get interrupted in those creative times, you kind of feel like you're incomplete throughout the day. That's kind of how I feel too. Like if I don't get my right foot in front of me, I'm just kind of off the rest of the day, so that's definitely, I can definitely sympathize with that feeling. Yeah, definitely. So going back to, I lost my question. So is there anything that you wanted to plug other than what we just talked about, what's coming up this spring?
Not really. I guess one of the things that we've also done in the last 2 years is add an associate photographer who's been shooting alongside us this whole time. And that's allowed us the flexibility, in the unlikely chance, hopefully, that we ever have to call in a second shooter.
Oh, yes.
That we have somebody who knows exactly how we shoot, is familiar with both of us, and also is able to take on some of those weddings that maybe don't fit within our budget, or the budget that we tend to attract. And that's been really, really nice. And it also allows us to help out not only the photographer themselves, but their family as well. So we've been really excited to work alongside with Courtney Smith. And so far, we've just had one associate photographer and learning all the nuances of what that looks like.
You started basically a bulk brand, kind of.
Yeah. And, after 10 years, I feel pretty well established in that. And we tend to attract those people who are really down to earth, much like ourselves, and love the outdoors, are very laid back and tend to be attracted to, just kind of that Northwoods living.
Nice.
And a lot of them live in the cities or are away at college earning master's degrees and are planning a wedding at the same time. So very heavily involved with their parents and big families back in central Wisconsin and throughout the state. So that's kind of our ideal clients are people who love to just hang out on a boat in summer and love hiking in the woods.
What's the craziest wedding you've shot? Like, be it something that threw you off your game to the most elaborate. Let's go with that. What's the most elaborate one you've shot?
Oh man, probably the biggest challenge of my career was early on. It was like 2012, and Katie and I flew to Dublin, Ireland, and
that's awesome.
That was our first destination wedding. And so I had to learn how to drive stick on the left side of the road in Ireland. And it was one of those things where like, okay, brain, like you don't have a choice. You need to learn how to do this and do it well or you're going to die.
You couldn't find an automatic rental?
We couldn't afford it. Like we were on a shoestring budget and I knew how to drive stick. I just didn't know how to drive stick with my left hand. But let me tell you.
And your other foot too? Or were the pedals messed
up? Oh yeah,
up,
totally opposite. I'm like, okay, brain, just switch. And it was so much fun. And at the same time, super stressful. We had taken along our baby who was only like 5 months old too. So we're backpacking this kid. And when you look back in it, you're like, how did we do that?
Right.
And at the same time,
I'm afraid to take both my kids to the store at the same time.
And it was amazing. I'd shot for a childhood friend, basically a kid I went to middle school with who was marrying a woman he had met and lived in Dublin. And it's one of the highlights of my career. And it's not something that we do a ton of, obviously. That would be really challenging with our lifestyle.
Yeah,
but, in the future, if I continue to shoot weddings, I would love to do more of that. And I hopefully won't be as stressed out.
Right. Yeah, destination would be nice. I have a couple in Minocqua this year. It's technically not destination, but the people are going to Minocqua from out of state, so it's kind of destination. So, what's your booking process? What would people do to get a hold of you, and what's your best method to get a hold of you for booking a wedding? And how far do you book out to?
Oh, great question. So we always drive people to our website to fill out our contact form, because in that contact form, it gives us all of their information that we then use for, we'll do a mailing, and then we also follow up with quotes and things like that. So, if somebody will contact me through Facebook, I'll always direct them back through our website just to keep that consistency in that sales funnel.
Cool.
And we prefer everything to be as easy and as straightforward as possible. So we use an online invoicing system, an estimation program, and then we also use online contracts.
Okay.
And for the most part, our couples are not local. So we will schedule an online hangout similar to this and just have a conversation. And those, those initial meetings, for the most part, I already assume that they're wanting to go with us. And by and large, if they schedule a hangout with us, they'll book. And within like 25 minutes, I'll have sent them their contract, their online invoice, and scheduled all of their payments, and they're good to go. And they can rest assured, like, okay, we booked our photographer, done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, we do that as well. So what is your website?
It's james-stokes.com.
And social media, are you on Instagram?
We are. It's James Stokes Photo is our wedding brand.
Okay. I want to thank you for joining me on the podcast, James, and look forward to seeing everything you have going on this spring, and hopefully we can do another wedding together.
That sounds great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.